Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
1 in 4 children believe potatoes grow on trees. 1 in 5 children believe fish fingers are made from chicken. And 1 in 8 adults believe the moon landings didn't happen. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Paul Allen.
Joining us now, we have Abbott Downing and Deputy CIO Carol Schleif. What a quiet day it was on U.S. equity markets. Volatility pretty much evaporating, really. Seems to be that equities really looking for a catalyst here. What's going to provide it?
Perhaps the earnings season in a couple weeks, and I think until then you've got pretty equally balanced. Even if it's surprising, the surprises come from opposite sides. You had worse business news and better consumer news. So I think a lot of people don't want to get all the way out, but don't necessarily want to commit even more. And so you'll have that sort of push me, pull you kind of tension until we get into earnings season.
Yeah, what are your expectations for earnings season? Because it appears that a lot of the gains we've seen in equity markets over the past few weeks have really been due to future promises of Fed easing. What's your opinion?
I think a piece of that, but the underlying economy is still in pretty reasonable shape. Even globally, there's clouds on the horizon, if you will, but not necessarily indications of a huge next recession coming. And so you've got good consumer confidence and spending in the U.S., and the U.S. has been, in prior markets, has been the engine of global growth. And so I think there's a big balance that way that people are looking for and waiting on.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks are advancing with U.S. stock index futures, while Asian shares are rising modestly as investors wait hopes for high-level trade talks next month between U.S. and China against mixed economic data from around the globe. The pound is rising as the U.K. Supreme Court said Prime Minister Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament was unlawful. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 8.5 points this morning. Dow futures up 71. NASDAQ futures up 25. And this update is brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at ibkr.com/CME Mini. DAX in Germany is little change this morning. So is the FTSE 100, while the CAC in Paris is up 0.25%. 10-year Treasury up 5/32, yield 1.70%. The yield on the 2-year 1.67%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.1% or 63 cents at 58.02 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.2% or $3.10 at 15.2840 an ounce. The euro 1.0994 against the dollar. British pound 1.2440 and the yen at 107.73. And prosecutors have charged the chief executive of VW with misleading markets. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, President Trump goes before the UN General Assembly today. World leaders are grappling with several issues, including climate change, regional conflicts, and a potential dispute in the Middle East. President Trump ordered his acting chief of staff to delay sending $400 million in military aid to Ukraine at least a week before he spoke to that country's president. That's according to a person familiar with the matter. Trump's July 25th telephone call with the new Ukrainian president is the subject of a congressional investigation and is part of a whistleblower complaint. In Monday Night Football, the Bears down the Redskins 31-15. In baseball, the Mets' chances to make the playoffs got slimmer. They lost to the Marlins. The Red Sox and Orioles also lost. The Nationals won. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's just before 6:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, brought to you by Eisner-Amper. Taxes are one of the certainties of life, but what worked for corporate taxpayers in the past may not work today. Eisner-Amper can help. Visit EisnerAmper.com/tax tax certainty. Certainly saw certainty this morning from the UK Supreme Court when it comes to Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament, unanimously deciding it was unlawful. But certainty when it comes to Brexit might not be the best word to describe it. For more, let's bring in Richard Jones, FX and rates strategist on the Bloomberg Markets Live team. Good morning, Richard. Seeing some gains for gilts, and the British pound is strengthening just a touch this morning following that decision. Do you expect that to last?
Well, it's hard to see it lasting, actually, Nathan. I mean, when the result first came out, we had a little pop higher in the pound. Against the dollar, it was trading up around just under 125, and it's given up most of those gains now and is now trading little changed on the day. And it's actually, we were trading just under 126 last week, so we're about a 1% weaker than we were, I think it was Thursday or Friday last week. So traders aren't convinced that this Supreme Court ruling will give us any kind of certainty in terms of Brexit, in terms of what's happening in UK politics. I mean, the big questions, is Brexit going to be delayed? Does this lead to an early election? And if there is an early election, when is that going to happen? Those questions haven't been answered, and they linger on. And the problem is, for anybody who's looking for any sterling upside, is that the clock is still ticking. And then if nothing else happens between now and the 31st of October, the UK leaves the European Union without a deal.
Tell me if you think this is sort of the way things could go. I mean, it seems as though there could be several catalysts for markets, whether it's early elections, whether it's Boris Johnson either deciding to stay in office or deciding to resign, whether Brexit happens on time or is delayed. I mean, what kind of volatility are we looking for here?
Well, if you had to answer just one of those questions, Nathan, it would lead to volatility. But the fact that you have all of those questions needing to be answered virtually concurrently, it means that we're going to have a lot of volatility in the coming months. And the nature of political risk for markets is that it's very unpredictable. And so it's hard for investors to actually get their arms around it, because things just come out of the blue. And even this, I think, fairly definitive Supreme Court statement and ruling on what the government did and found what the government did was unlawful, it still doesn't really give us the clarity that any investor would hope for with regards to what's going on in UK politics. And the big, obviously, overriding thing here is what happens with Brexit now. And we don't have any answers to that yet.
Just looking at GP Go on cable, the range over the last year for the pound against the dollar has been somewhere between 120 and 134. It's trading at 124 handle right now. What do you see pound breaking out of that range, given the volatility that we could see here?
Well, Nathan, I think if we do break out of that range, I think that the downside is in danger of breaking. It's going to be very, very difficult for the pound to get a lot of upward traction unless, and this is a huge unless, they come up with a deal that actually smooths the UK's departure from the EU, or if Brexit is rescinded, and I think the chances of that are very low. There's just so many moving parts here. They've been unable to get a deal passed since it was actually put on the table in the UK, gosh, about a year ago now. Mm-hmm. We don't have political clarity. It doesn't look like that's going to get any clearer anytime soon. So if it's going to break out of a range, I think it breaks through on the downside, which means that the pound will be trading lower.
And how much lower? I mean, what kind of levels do you think the pound could be testing against the dollar?
Well, I think we've had a low just below 120 earlier this month, so 119.60. That's probably your first port of call. But then going beyond that, I think that we're looking at something. Gosh, the lows in the 80s were about 105. I think somewhere between that 119 and 105 is where we sort of find a bottom, but that's still a long way away.
Richard Jones, FX and rate strategist, the Bloomberg Markets Live team. The Brexit deadline not so long away. October 31st is when Boris Johnson has promised to break the UK out of the EU. Whether that holds, as he says, remains to be seen. And Bloomberg customers can get more from Richard and the rest of the Markets Live team. MLIV Go is the function on the Bloomberg terminal. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. The early market indicators are pointing to a bounce higher at the open on Wall Street on trade optimism. Bloomberg has learned the Chinese government has given new waivers to several domestic, state, and private companies to buy U.S. soybeans without being subject to retaliatory tariffs. NYMEX crude down 1% and just above $58 a barrel. Stocks were mainly little changed on Wall Street yesterday. Dow Jones is reporting that federal prosecutors are conducting a criminal investigation of the electronic vaping company Juul. The report said it was unable to learn the focus of the probe, but that the investigation was out of Northern California, where Juul is based, and was in its early stages. Anheuser-Busch InBev has pulled off one of the year's biggest IPOs the second time around, raising about $5 billion by listing its Asian unit in Hong Kong 2 months after scrapping the original share sale. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
After graduating from NJIT, Maria Kuzam joined pharmaceutical giant Merck & Company. As a chemical engineer, she's part of Merck's Global Engineering Solutions and leads worldwide communications for the Merck Women's Network. She also helps the company recruit new talent from top universities like NJIT.
I think NJIT graduates, they really come in and hit the ground running, right? They know how to problem solve. They've been prepared for it. They know how to work individually as well as in teams. They have that kind of flexibility to work both ways, and that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for someone that is able to do both, is able to do the individual work, but also work across teams and communicate effectively. And I think NJIT is definitely helping us with providing some of that key talent pool, and having that leadership capability is invaluable.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at storiesofinnovation.njit.edu.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now, there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. You need breaking news and the long view.
What's the government doing in terms of trying to adopt artificial intelligence?
How has that impacted tax receipts?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
At 6:30 on Wall Street, good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour, beginning with news out of Britain. The UK's top court has inflicted an unprecedented legal defeat on Prime Minister Boris Johnson, ruling his suspension of Parliament was unlawful. We get the very latest from Bloomberg's Guy Johnson in London.
The ruling has been that Parliament should return ASAP. Effectively, the prorogation never happened. The suspension never happened. Parliament is reopened for business. It is a stunning defeat for the government. There will be huge numbers of calls now for the Prime Minister to resign.
The unanimous decision is a boost for those seeking to prevent Johnson from leaving the EU without a deal next month.
Here in the U.S., futures are higher amid signs of easing tensions in the trade war. Bloomberg News has learned China is granting new waivers for companies to purchase U.S. soybeans without tariffs. More from Bloomberg's Enda Curran in Hong Kong.
There is a feeling among economists that these subset of issues around market access, IP, and purchasing farm goods can be resolved over coming weeks. And this gesture now by China to allow some state-owned buyers, including Costco and so on, to go and buy some soybeans from the U.S. kind of adds to that argument.
Sources say Chinese companies received waivers for between 2 and 3 million tons of soybeans.
Google has won a European court battle over the right to be forgotten. The EU Court of Justice has previously told Google to remove European links to websites that contain out-of-date or false information. This time, the French Privacy Authority was seeking to extend the rule globally, but the court says the ruling will only apply in Europe.
Facebook's making an acquisition. Sources tell us the social network's agreed to buy CTRL Labs. It's a company that's building software to let people control digital avatars with their minds. Kurt Wagner has more from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
We're reporting they paid more than $500 million for this company, and we've seen a bunch of other tech companies get into AR as well, the idea of Snapchat or Microsoft. I mean, this is a very fertile kind of technology here, this artificial intelligence and this augmented reality, and so it's no surprise that Facebook is investing pretty heavily here.
And shares of Facebook are up nearly 0.5% in early trading.
And Volkswagen shares down more than 2% in Germany after the company's CEO and chairman were both charged with market manipulation. Allegations say they failed to inform investors early enough about the diesel emission scandal. Futures this morning are higher. S&P futures up 8 points. Dow futures up 65. NASDAQ futures up 23. DAX in Germany, little change. 10-year Treasury up 6/30 seconds. Yield 1.70%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. 6:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Members of Congress are paying attention to the running attacks from President Trump and former Vice President Biden regarding Ukraine. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
The president says investigation should not focus on his admitted conversation with the president of the Ukraine, but focus largely on the discredited allegations against Joe and Hunter Biden.
Biden did what they would like to have me do, except that one problem, I didn't do it. What Biden did is a disgrace. What his son did is a disgrace.
Meanwhile, Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani on Fox says he can't be 100% certain that the president didn't threaten Ukraine's president.
That was a false story.
100%.
Well, I can't tell you if it's 100%.
Because we know that the administration did delay U.S. aid to Ukraine.
Both Congress members Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi say this could move them steps closer to opening impeachment proceedings. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
President Trump goes before the UN General Assembly today. The president is praising British and French efforts to find a diplomatic solution and reduce tension between the U.S. and Iran. However, the president says the U.S. is not looking for any mediators. World leaders and chief executives of global corporations gathered at a UN summit yesterday to say that a 16-year-old climate activist from Sweden is right. They are failing. Greta Thunberg told a crowd of more than 300 presidents, prime ministers, CEOs, bankers, and delegates that they've let down her entire generation by not acting on climate change.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Meanwhile, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi took a swipe at President Trump during the UN summit, saying the world will continue to fight global warming without him. An American soldier is in custody in connection with plotting a terror attack inside the U.S. The FBI says infantryman Jared William Smith allegedly planned on targeting a news network with a large vehicle full of bombs and named presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke as a potential target for assassination. Global news 24 hours a day, on air, and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Bard. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. 6:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, brought to you by Burton Accountants and Advisors. Here's John Stashar.
Nathan, the Mets surprisingly got back into the pennant race with that 15-1 stretch, but 6 straight home losses in late August meant they had a very small margin of error. They needed help, and the Milwaukee Brewers did not provide that help. They've won 15 of the last 17. So the NL wildcard game will almost certainly be Milwaukee against Washington. The Mets lost last night to the lowly Marlins 8-4, a game where both teams had 6th-inning grand slams. Ahmed Rosario for the Mets, but that's all they got. And the Mets' elimination could come as early as tonight, and yet their manager, Mickey Callaway, still refusing to wave the white flag.
Backs are against the wall. I think this team has performed pretty well when their backs are against the wall, so we need to step it up. We need to make another run at it, never give up. I think that that's all this team knows how to do.
Yankees off last night, started a 2-game series tonight at Tampa Bay. Rays in a fight to make the AL wildcard game. The Yanks have their sights set on finishing with baseball's best record, a half game behind Houston. Astros played tonight in Seattle. Monday Night Football in Washington. Chicago won easily 31-15. Bears led 28-0. Mitchell Trubisky had 3 touchdown passes, all in the second quarter, all to Tyler Gabriel. Case Keenum threw 3 interceptions, making you wonder if the 0-3 Redskins might bench Keenum when they visit the Giants Sunday, and that would make for a game between rookie quarterbacks, Dwayne Haskins and Daniel Jones, top 2 QBs taken to the draft. But Washington coach Jake Gruden said last night he's not making that move. Sunday will be Jones's first home start. No Saquon Barkley. His high ankle sprain is going to keep him out at least 1 month, but more likely 2 months. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. It's 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following is an editorial from Bloomberg Opinion.
Global meat consumption has doubled since the 1960s. That's mostly welcome news, evidence living standards are rising. But Americans still eat 3 times as much meat as the global average. They and other rich world diners should consider curbing their appetite. Consider this. The world's livestock emit more greenhouse gases than the entire aviation industry. From a climate change perspective, serving roast beef at dinner is as bad as driving 100 miles. Fortunately, small changes in diet can mean big gains for the climate. You could drive 70 fewer miles each week, or you could switch to the Mediterranean diet and have the same climate impact. Or you could join the Meatless Mondays movement. Foregoing 1 hamburger each week is like driving 1,000 miles less every year. Not everyone can or should go without meat. But if you live in a wealthy country with abundant protein, consider cutting back. This editorial was written by the Bloomberg Opinion Editorial Board. I'm David Shipley. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPI and Go on the Bloomberg Terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion editorials every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. Just before 6:39 on Wall Street, time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
It's a new policy aimed at stopping sparks from igniting dangerous wildfires that have plagued California in recent years. But a decision to simply shut off electricity to large areas of the state is creating some sparks of its own. Pacific Gas and Electric was forced to file for bankruptcy protection in January under crippling wildfire liabilities. Fallen power lines have ignited a series of catastrophic wildfires. With dry and windy conditions forecast through Wednesday, the utility started by cutting power to about 21,000 customers in 3 Northern California counties in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. PG&E's Deanna Contreras says 124,000 customers could be affected if it gets too windy and dry this week.
We understand and appreciate how turning off the power affects people and may create hardships during a heightened fire risk.
Critics argue that shutting off the power every time it gets windy unfairly burdens vulnerable residents just so utilities can limit their liability. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
All right, Bob, thanks. Let's take a look now at some of the most active stocks in early trading. Shares of Fiat Chrysler are down more than 1% after the company lost an EU court ruling on taxes. Judges threw out a challenge by Fiat over its fiscal arrangements in Luxembourg.